All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode with our makeshift schedule of the If Only You'd Been Faster podcast. I actually, hang on, sorry, we'll get to introduction in a second. The topic for this podcast is going to be, do segmented speed runs matter? Which is something that we definitely have some strong opinions in the virtual room on. So I'm excited for this discussion. I am Goober. If you're watching this, which is on my channel, you probably already know who I am. I do a bunch of speedrun related stuff. Look me up on the Discord if you're curious. With me, I have Duane Jones. Can you introduce yourself, Mr. Jones?
Hi, I'm Duane Jones. I have sped run video games before, only segmented speedruns ever because I'm lazy.
All right, we'll get into the motivation behind different segmented speedruns in the podcast, but that's a good
Oh
prelude.
my days.
And I also have Mr. Intharth. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yo, what's up? I'm mostly an RTA speedrunner, but for the purposes of this, I will indulge the conversation.
So I think I'm just going to kind of be playing referee here between the two
Honestly,
instances.
no. I think you'll be surprised. I am not against them. Trust me.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm looking forward to this discussion. So, we'll dive right into it. I have some prompts that I'm going to kind of go with, and then we'll kind of see where the conversation takes us. So, first thing that I will set us up with, and I'll start with Intharth on this because I think your view on this is going to do a good job of getting us started. Do segmented speedruns matter? And I'll leave matter to your own interpretation. What you think that means?
So it's weird, right? Because like I said, I'm mostly, as you know, an RTA runner, but I have done segmented runs. I've done Red Doom, which is a Red Faction mod. I also did Left 4 Dead 2 segmented run, right? And I think when you say matters, it can sometimes depend on the game, because sometimes it the ruling on what constitutes a segmented run can just be, did you cut out loads or not, right? Or it can be, are you cheating? So it can come in different scopes. And like, I think when I think about a segmented run mattering, I think of, first of all, I look to tasks, right? Tool assisted speedruns. And I'm like, you could argue that's segmented in its own right. It's not, it's a tool assisted run. But in terms of showcasing perfection, that's what it does. And segmented runs is you taking your best attempts at certain levels in the game, usually, and compiling them together to get your all right. Let me put it this way. I did another segmented run. I did Lord of the Rings Conquest. Now it's quite a difficult run because it is very execution heavy. It's not strategy. It's not out of bounds. It's just a lot of perfection to it. And at the end of it, I saved like a minute segmented. Then I do RTA because like I'm cutting the loads and I'm also getting strategies first try, whatever. When I think about segmented mattering, it's like, is it does it need to be perfect, right? And I don't think it does. And I don't think it does because like you're taking your best shot at something. And listen, I know some people will play segmented until they get the perfect absolute split perfection on like you would have when you did your Red Faction Impossible runs, right? You would have absolutely grinded that out until you were satisfied that that specific load to load was perfect, the water boosts, right? You didn't take a no for an answer for that, right? Like, but I think for me, when I did Left 4 Dead 2, I was like, I just want to get to the end of the level and see if I'm satisfied.
Right.
And if
Okay.
I'm satisfied, I'll just move on to the next. And I think mattering is subjective depending on the game, but also depending on how you feel about your performance with a segmented run. For me, it was just, how good can I get it if I take a couple of stabs at it? For a lot of the hardcore segmented runners, or it's more about perfection or striving for perfection. But I do think it matters in terms of showcasing what's possible without tool assisted speedruns, because tool assisted speedruns is quote unquote beyond the human limit in a lot of cases, right? But segmented speedruns are what humans can do. So
Okay.
I
So
find that is
Okay, so no, I want to get Duane in on this conversation, and just picking up on something that you just said, Duane. I'll ask you to respond to that, but I'll also throw in this. just kind of building on something that Intharth just said, do you see, kind of loop this into your answer, do you see segmented runs as kind of the middle ground between a single segment run and a task run?
Yes, I think they occupy. I think they occupy a space. That space. They occupy that space. In my own head, I don't think about tasks very often because none of the games that I ever ran, and rarely the games I'm interested in outside of like really big flagship games like Mario or something, have been tasked or are
Yeah.
even possibly taskable. So like tasks is as far as like a spectrum of like the ultimate brokenness of a game, the task would be on that end of it, whereas an RTA would be what's on average possible by a person on a single attempt.
Okay, so I guess to that, Duane, do you like in terms of, I guess, what is the purpose of a segmented as you fix your microphone? What is the purpose of a segmented run in your mind? Is it just kind of the same thing that speedruns usually are? You know, it's a spectator sport, it's a show of skill, it's pastime, it's interest, all those sort of things. Or is there also a kind of a place for segmented runs in helping to show almost like a sum best of what's possible in a single segmented run? Do you see them kind of as a kind of like a gateway to single segmented because they're a bit more approachable? Is that the primary focus or the primary purpose of a segmented run in your mind?
Yeah, and it's going to vary. It's going to vary from game to game. But yeah, a segmented run should be something that is at any given time the pinnacle of what can literally be done in a game. Like if you do a segmented run and it doesn't include all the possible stuff, and I'm sure there's exceptions that we could think of, but if it doesn't include all of the possible strat skips, whatever, I don't think that would be being done in good faith.
Okay.
Which is another thing that like segmented, like maybe we'll get to later, that there's a much heavier burden of responsibility and accountability on a segmented speedrunner than there is on somebody doing RTAs.
Okay. In fact, do you have anything to add on those couple topics?
So the difference there from what you just said about like how it's in bad faith if you don't do your absolute best to include every single top tier strategy that you can because you've got as many attempts as it. Like I said, when I did the Left 4 Dead ones, I'm not exceptionally skilled at Left 4 Dead 2, right? But like it was more for personal fun rather than I'm putting the segmented run out there. This is going to be the best run. I'm just, can I give it a couple of tries per level and just what's the best outcome? The thing that puts me off segmented runs is the editing, right? Because it's splicing at the end of the day. And like, I'm sure you both know from geothermal that editing is a pain in the butt. And but again, it's like Duane said, it depends on the game. Sometimes it's just cutting out the loading screens. Right. Red Faction, it's every single save load couplet that you have to do. And that got worse the more modern the game got with more tricks, right?
Right.
When you guys did it, there was less save loading, but you still had to save load quite a bit to like, segmented each section as much as you wanted.
Even without geothermal, there's still like, I mean, geothermal had I think what was it, like 700-800 segments that were like each one frame long, which was
it's crazy.
That was a chore. Watch our previous podcast episode if you're curious about that. I went in depth into that. But yeah, I mean, even without that, there's still a couple hundred segments in that run just because of how much, how much RNG that there is in it, and how many, opportunities to do something slightly less than optimal. And I mean, Red Faction in particular also has something that not all games that have segmented runs have, where you can't really do anything out of sequence. Like, you have to record the segmented run as you go in Red Faction. That's not always the case in games like Half-Life and that sort of thing. I mean, I can only think of one. I guess Merc Jail is kind of the only section of Red Faction where like you could, if you wanted to,
you could just pick it up,
pick it up right there. But other than that, what happens depends on what you've already done in the game, so you can't really do that. what I did want to ask though, like, do you think that, I'll ask this to both of you, but Duane, I'll get you to go first, just because Intharth was just responding to that. Do you think that segmented runs have to be perfect? Like, do you think that there is any purpose, I guess, for you, or either for you doing or for you as a viewer? Do you think that there's any purpose in it doing a segmented run that doesn't grind everything to get it as best as the runner or runners can do?
There's yes and no. So yes, there's a purpose in it, as in like if there's it's not a waste of time, and maybe saying it was in bad faith is not accurate. That has more to do with my own like internal compass. But it's like if you're going to do a segmented run, it doesn't have to be perfect, but then that gets into minutia of it better be fucking faster than an
Yeah.
RTA. Because like at what, like, why are you spending this time to do this if you're not going to put that care into it? And generally, and again, this is where like there's more accountability, I think, on the segmented speedrunner, that it's not as a casual of an endeavor. And if people, and if it, I mean, someone can, if someone wants to casually speedrun a segment, like do a casual segmented speedrun, go for it. That's great. I just don't I don't understand why.
Well, that's the thing. Would you do it yourself? And I think the answer to that, based on what you just said, is no. Or would you be interested in watching a segmented speedrun that, the author wasn't trying their hardest to do everything as perfect as they can?
Only if it had some other redeeming value, like, hey, I'm doing this segmented run just to show off this one particular trick, or like how to do whatever. But if there was that idea of like, oh, I just didn't do this, like I didn't do the water boost because I couldn't get it, it's like, well, then don't what then, I don't.
Yeah, because Goober he couldn't get the water boost, and he like asked Hallmark, "Can you pitch in and do the water boost for me so that we can carry on with the run?"
Yeah, well, so I did that for the first one, and then when I did the second one, for some reason the water boost worked fine on my laptop, but not on my desktop. So I did the entire run on my desktop, and then migrated my save game files over to my laptop. Did that one like 4-second segment on my laptop, and then went back to doing the rest on my desktop. And I mean, it worked. You can probably tell in the video if you really look for it, but barely. So
the quality slightly shifts in that
exactly.
1 4-second slot.
So Intharth, let me.
No,
or sorry, Duane.
I was going to just say that is one of the things I really like about segmented speedrunning is the minutia of doing it, like doing it not just correctly, that's not the right word, but doing it in good faith. Like you said, like migrating my save files over to a different computer, doing this so that I wasn't just splicing, so I wasn't just making this the equivalent of a sum of the best segments. Like I actually went through and did the work to make this within the bounds of what we consider to be segmented speedrunning.
And that's what I did for Left 4 Dead 2, right? It was just, what could my sum of best look like if I gave them a couple of shots each time? I wasn't trying to do top of the range stuff. But for the other ones, like the Red Doom that I did with Grant, that was, can we see how fine a time we can get? And like to pivot that, when it was like the Half-Life one, when you get like the community's best runners together to do this big show-off segmented run of like Half-Life 1, Half-Life 2, or even Portal, right? Like these kind of like games, that is a really good spectator sport, because that is everybody's perfection. You have these groups of people that individually have low parts where they're good at, parts where they're not so good at, and all these things in between, and you combine them and just take all of their best parts, and that is an amazing thing to watch, because it is such a display of skill, and it shows, again, the human limit, not the task limit, right? Because it's all these people that work together that know how to play the game perfectly, in other words. And I think like what Duane's saying is like, if you're not going to do the top strats, why bother? Like, I get that. And like, for me, it's like, I understand that. Like, I was watching Summoning Salt this morning, like his brand new video with just like Smash Bros. Melee, which is like the quest to get the community best times for the whole game under 3 minutes. And it was like, they had 53 frames to go or whatever. And I'm like, that's technically an RTA run, because the the person's doing RTA, but they're combining their community bests to get the high score under 3 minutes. So to me, that's segmented, right? Because then you're combining everybody's score to get that time. So that's a segmented sum of best, right? And I think there's so much merit, especially in like individual level concepts like that. That's where a lot of the segmented runs for me shine, is individual level heavy categories. Like Red Faction is a game with individual levels, but it's straightforward. There's no go to a main menu, load a different level, go back to the, or you go into like a hack and slash game where you finish level, you come out into this sort of like upgrade screen. There's none of that, right? You don't transition, you just run straight forward. So I think with Red Faction, there's merit to the segmented videos, because they do show what we couldn't do. And the other merit, like I said, between TAS and human limit difference is that, like, remember when Grant started really grinding the 80%, and he says in his world record progression video, I couldn't understand why some of these segmented strats haven't been used yet. And he just went and he analyzed and he pushed and took every single one as best he could and threw it into the run. And it shows, like again, with the Half-Life run, if you really put your nose to the grindstone, could you do it? Yes, right. You could.
Right. Like I remember even hearing, I watched some of the commentary videos that like the Half-Life 2041 folks did. And they went through that and like kind of detailed their process, and yeah, it was extremely interesting. Like the hoops that they had to jump through. Like, I mean, Duane, going back to the conversation about that you were commenting on how I had to like switch save game files over to my laptop and that sort of thing. Like, there was one instance in the Half-Life 2041 commentary where I think it was Cool Kid, don't quote me on that, but I think it was Cool Kid, mentioned that that one segment in was it in Surface? No, I think it was in On a Rail, where like he had to put like these sticky mines on the wall and like jump up on a bunch of sticky mines to like basically form a ladder. He was saying that like he did that on like Christmas Eve at his grandmother's house on like an old like Pentium 3 or something, like just because like
dedication to the sport.
Exactly, like he was just kind of doing it with whatever he had, wherever he could, whatever would work. And like they took a long time to do that right now. I mean, that's a bit more approachable with something like Half-Life because of demos than it is with Red Faction, but
Yep.
still it's the same sort of thing. And the other thing that I wanted to say, just kind of building on something that Intharth was just saying, like, I don't mean to get too high here above above the subject matter, but I think it's very cool that segmented runs are possible. And by that I mean speedrunning is inherently a competitive, I don't know if it's accurate to call it a sport, but it is a competitive endeavor. It's a competitive activity. And unlike most competitive activities that we do with our friends or, whoever, like, hockey or chess or solitaire or whatever, like any of these things, like you actually can do segmented runs. You can't do that in a whole lot of competitive activities. And I just think that is really interesting that it is even possible to compete on something like this.
I'm sorry, I just got a really weird mental image of like pausing a football game mid-match to go, okay, can we run that back? That wasn't quite a perfect line. Can we do that again?
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Reset. Do that
again. That's a great observation. It's a unique way of playing the game that some people don't understand, and it's hard to sometimes. For example, I was trying to explain to some people the difference between a sum of best and a segmented run. And let's not even go into that. But for example, like one of the first speed runs, I think a lot of people, at least of my generation, saw or was exposed to was Quake done quick and Quake done quicker, which you'd watch and you'd be like, this is insane, and then you try and recreate it yourself, and you'd be like, this is impossible. This must be fake. And then you'd learn more into it and realize that, like, oh, like this was it was segmented, and not in the same way that Half-Life 2041 was, but
if
the idea that like this was not played in real time.
If I may ask, Duane.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to ask you a question because I'm gonna out myself here. Never played Quake. Sorry, everyone. Sorry. Never played Quake. When I'm talking about like Red Faction is very much single, straightforward. Is Quake levels, or do you just carry on through the game?
It is levels. There's
so it's like Doom, where you come out to a main menu and you go back in, right?
Well, no, you don't go back to the main menu, but it's
you know
not
what
like...
I mean, though, right? There's a transitional menu between them or whatever.
Yeah, there's an end screen to a level that shows like how long it took and
it's not like Red Faction or Half-Life where you just like go down a hallway, load screen comes up, and then you continue walking down the same hallway.
Yeah,
no,
it's more like Red Faction 2, right?
Yes,
exactly. Yeah. So like,
Red Faction 2 is more like Quake. Let's put it that way.
So would you say that? Yes. So would you say back then, Duane, it was more approachable for those guys to do segmented runs because they could just load it up and try again and again and again? Or would you say that they preferred it? Or would you just say it was easier? Or would you say that single segment back then for a game like Quake just wasn't a thing?
If I remember correctly, Quake Done Quick was that done on Nightmare? I think it was. So
it's been a while. I can't remember.
It's my response is going to depend on that. So I'm going to have to look this up.
I will just say while you're doing that, it is an interesting point that I hadn't really thought of a whole lot before. That
it is Nightmare.
The method for how a segmented run is done varies based on what is available in the game. Like in a game like Red Faction, where you have quick saving, you can like segment wherever you want. Like you can just say like, I'm gonna do this jump and then segment after that jump so that I don't have to do that jump again. Whereas in a game that doesn't have quick saving, and I don't happen to know off the top of my head if Quake 2 does, but
Quake. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, or I never played Metro, but like something like Quake 2, I don't think it has quick save. I am not that familiar with it, but I don't think it has quick save. So like at that point, you have to do the segments, or any game that doesn't have quick save, you have to do the segments at the load screens that the game provides for you. So you can't grind those near as hard as a game where you can like kill this one guy, segment, make this one jump, segment, blow this one geotunnel, segment. Yeah.
And that's why I wasn't super interested in grinding like an exceptionally good Left 4 Dead 2 time, because going between the campaigns, like your splice is on the transition to the next level. There is no in between.
So you've got at least a couple of minutes per segment.
Yeah, so I wasn't really I mean, there are people that do care about that in Left 4 Dead. Don't get me wrong, but like, and again, like it's the exact same between Red Faction 2 and Red Faction 1, or even Red Faction on console, because you don't have quick save on console, obviously, but also it is just slower naturally. Your time between segments, because you could definitely save the game on console, but it is a chore to do so because of how it works. Like the difference is, and then like that's where I think, again, sorry, just to quickly, and then we'll go back to Quake. It's where TAS and segmented can differ, because TAS tools relies on save states, right? Like you need save states for TAS to like sort of. I think so. Anyways,
depends on the game. Depends on the
right. Depends on the game.
Using,
sorry, yeah, but mostly when you think of like TAS tools, you think save states, you think rewind, you think take it back, go forward, all that kind of stuff. Whereas in segmented, you don't really have that same affordability. You have to just try and play your best, right?
Right.
On the Quake thing, going back to like, why do you, Intharth, you were saying like, what do you think motivated them to do a segmented run? I'm sure there were non-segmented runs. Actually, I'm not sure, but I bet there was. So my argument for why they would choose to do it that way was because it was played on Nightmare, and at the time it showed off the utmost of what could be humanly possible. And to get that into a tight package that was a 12-minute, MP4 or QuickTime movie that you could get out onto the internet, because it looks the fucking coolest.
Oh yeah.
You don't want to see somebody like going through the menus. You want to see the game start and then all this cool shit happen, and that leaves you. It's visually and impressive skill wise. And then what happens is that I remember reading the comments I think it was on Half-Life 2041 just a few years ago, reading the YouTube comments, and how many people in there are like, "This is cheating. This isn't even playing the game." You mean that they like paused and like did stuff that affected the game? As soon as you pause, like that's over. And you want to be like, well, okay, but like when you pause your game and then start playing it again, it's not like you started a new game.
I've actually gotten exactly the same comments on my segmented runs, and you probably have as well, Duane, for Red Faction, where people are just like, well, actually, not only segmented runs, but I've gotten people who said, you segmented, you're cheating. I've gotten people who said, wait, you abused a glitch, you're cheating. Like, it's just like,
Yeah,
guys, like, I gather that speed runs mean different things to different people, and different people have different preferences and all that sort of stuff. But like,
I do.
But when people don't recognize that what segmenting is as a like legitimate category, it's like, and that's different than like, well, why don't you just like put on no clip and load the next level? That'd be faster. And you're like, but that's not a. If you were, I mean, I guess if you want to be like crazy, you could make a category where like, well, who can type in the cheats the fastest to load the final level, and that could be its own like type.
Yeah.
That would be testing your typing speed, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, sorry, just really quick, just on that. I remember when we were talking about putting together that kind of like CADX category for Red Faction for cheat percent. There was a conversation about which console commands, because the cheats are console commands, that we should allow in the run. And I'm just like, the very first one, I'm like, okay, you're not allowed to enter the level command. It's like, well,
shoot.
obviously, if I can cheat and use the level command, it's literally start the game, hit console, type load last level. There you go.
I think it was easier for us. I think it was easy for us to define which cheats because it's the ones that everyone knows. It's invulnerability, it's all weapons, and it's fly. Like
It's
before
pretty basic,
Alpine Faction, that was there was other console commands, but like the only one that people in Red Faction were used to using for speedrunning was the FPS command for Pure Faction, and that was obsolete. So it didn't really matter at that point, right?
Sure, but
other than that, yeah. I wanted to like not to migrate the topic, but like to sort of like just you're talking about people starting to comment out cheating, and I think the more segmented runs are being discovered as cheated RTA runs, the more people have come out against segmented runs because they think that someone is trying to cheat or someone is splicing, right? And that's not on the segmented runner's fault. That's the people who are like I don't know if you guys are aware about this, but there was this one guy who submitted a run to GDQ, and it's old history now, ancient history. It's like the dark ages of internet history now. But it was Halo, and it was the hardest difficulty of Halo, and he submitted it himself to GDQ, and he spliced his runs. He had to lower the difficulty twice at GDQ to finish the run, and it was 4 hours of torture. And like, so I think that's like the more that stuff happens in the RTA world, the more people are like, oh, segmented is cheating. You can't do that. That's cheating. And like, I get the perspective, but I do think that people who take segmented runs seriously, it's for a completely dual purpose, right?
Right. And so that is a really interesting topic. Was not on my list, but I'm totally down to discuss that. However, we're gonna we'll discuss that in our second discussion half. However, we're gonna
Gotcha.
we're gonna try out this new format that I've been thinking about for these podcasts. So we're gonna move into our quickfire questions section now. And now I feel like Alex Trebek. So the way this is gonna work is I have 7 questions here. I'm going to ask the question, and let's go for Duane first and then Intharth. So I'm going to ask a question. Duane's going to give me his first response. They've never, for the viewers' benefit, they have no idea what these questions are. They've never heard them before. Give me your first off-the-cuff answer. First thing that comes to your mind. Not like a long answer, just like a sentence or two. I'll give you mine as well, but obviously I've already seen the question, so it's not as cool.
It's cheating. He's cheating.
Yeah, there you go. Then we'll go on to some other discussions after. So, first question: are you ready, Duane?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Born ready. Give it to me.
What is your favorite segmented run that you have ever seen?
Half-Life 2041.
Intharth.
Impossible Red Faction, only because it's the first one I've seen.
That's fair. Duane.
It's like a nostalgia thing. But
Duane...
I do want to. I don't want to like oversee the quickfire rule here, but like I get why Half-Life or something that would be the most impressive. But the Impossible, especially the blind K-Pick, it holds a lot of like personal nostalgia because that was like one of the first ones I got to fully see as it happened. You know.
Holds it for me too because I did it.
Yeah.
Oh fuck! He's talking about your Impossible run, not mine.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Oh, sorry. The reason it's yours, Goober, is because you didn't go around Med Labs twice. Got
Right,
it?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true.
I was going to say Half-Life 2041 as well, and the kind of quick one sentence I'd say on that is I know Half-Life Enormously Warped came after, and that is technically in the same category. It's technically still a segmented run, and it is a lot faster. However, I enjoyed watching that once. I have never wanted to watch it again. It was technically impressive, but I hate watching it. Half-Life 2041 I've probably watched 50 times. I just absolutely love watching that run. Okay. Duane, in one word, what is the biggest appeal of segmented runs for you?
great word.
Time management. There's hyphens here. Uh, being respectful of my timeness. Lazy.
That was even better because your stream lagged during it.
Oh man!
So you said your stuff and it wasn't synced with your mouth. It was perfect. Especially
Sounds
for
like
time
there was a
management.
Or
Splice.
80 or
You got
80 ADHD.
Yes, there you go.
I mean, that's.
Oh.
I feel obligated to respond with ADHD as well, but in a single word,
Yep.
it's skill gap.
Okay,
It shows the difference, right?
I'm gonna go with perfection. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Effectively, skill gap perfection is the where I was kind of going with it.
Okay, so next one, Duane. What genres or types of games are segmented runs not generally suitable for?
Oh, you got him there.
Games that don't have quick saves. Or
Okay.
games that suck.
Games that suck, yes. Go ahead, Intharth.
I have two answers. Is that okay?
Sure.
One, like 30-second long games where you're basically just get a free shot at trying it anyways, right? So like fucking Crossy Roads or stupid shit like that, right? Who cares? The other one is super long games. Now, I don't know if there's segmented Final Fantasy games out there, but I don't think even I could give a shit to watch it, right? Because it might be technically impressive, but it's so fucking long, I don't care.
Yeah. No, yeah, very fair point. By the way, before I give my answer, Duane, FYI, your stream is lagging a little bit, just heads up.
No, the focus isn't the problem.
Yeah, no, it's freezing every now and again.
No.
Okay. So my pick would be fighting games. I don't really think that fighting games are well suited to segmented runs. I like watching speedruns for fighting games.
So we were talking like Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Street Fighter,
those types of things. I mean, I suppose you could do them per instance, like you do with Quake, but it doesn't really interest me. I don't think they're very well suited for it. Okay, Duane, are you there? You seem
yes.
okay. Is segmented or single segmented generally more approachable for a brand new player coming into a game for the first time?
Single segment RTA, but arguments could be made to the converse, but generally I'd say single segment.
Okay.
I've got your argument. So this again, I know I talk a lot about Red Faction, but it's the one I know most about. It's the one I've got all the more knowledge in, right? But whenever a new person comes to Red Faction, I always say do each level over and over and over again until you sort of get it in your muscle memory, right? So to that effect, I'd say it's not really performing a segmented run, but it's like taking it in as a segmented feature until you can combine them together, right?
Oh, that's
so I think it playing it segmented is, from a casual perspective, an easier approach for certain games. Maybe not other games, but definitely for something like Red Faction. But I do think that, plus with individual levels, it's easier to like do the individual level board, get your muscle memory up through that, and then, But I do also think that RTA, it's the one thing that is, I always say, is get your first run on the board, and it's always up from there, right? So like, it's a dual answer again, but like, I think from a casual's first instinct, I do think that playing it as a segmented style is easier to build up on knowledge.
That's interesting. So you're saying not so much doing a segmented run, but doing segments.
Right. Like instead
Okay.
of just trying to like load up the game and go from start to finish and just try and learn it all in like a sitting, take it slow.
Right. That's interesting. I honestly hadn't really thought about it. I think I would be inclined to agree with that. But what I was going to say, just because I'll go with my answer before I heard yours, what I was going to say was basically the same as what Duane said, that I think RTA is generally more approachable, but I wasn't going to say it for the same reason. I was going to say RTA is more approachable for a brand new player coming into a game because RTA it's generally more acceptable in RTA to not know how to do everything and
Right.
not attempt everything
I get that.
because you're gonna if you attempt everything and you haven't practiced it, you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know, I think it's more generally expected and acceptable in an RTA or a single segment run to have mistakes, and you're gonna make mistakes when you're coming into a game for the first time.
I
So
I do feel I agree with that, but I also feel like the learning curve might hurt and you might hit motivation issues harder if because like I watch people who have been grinding their runs like SpongeBob, Simpsons Hit and Run, all these runs and these are people that know their games inside out and they still hit these walls of motivation issues because they're just hitting dead ends, right?
yeah, no,
And like
yeah.
if that happens to a brand new player, it's these are people who are dedicated. They've sunk too much time, right? A new player is going to hit that wall and be like, fuck it. Not
Right.
always, but and that's why I think that segmented can be a good stopgap because, as I said for Left 4 Dead 2, it doesn't necessarily need to be perfect. It just needs to be good enough for you to show what you can do and then try and work on it from there.
Okay. So
Sorry.
next quick fire question. Duane, should segmented runs have leaderboards?
Yes.
Why?
He wasn't ready for the follow-up.
The leaderboards should be, it's more of like a leaderboard would end up being more like of a chronology of when the segmented run was done as like like history. And also I know that I said a segmented run should be theoretically perfect, but within that you're going to get people that are going to do stuff better than others, even if it's like by frames. And if there's RNG, like there is a certain level of RNG that like you can is going to affect that, and there should be leaderboards. I don't know. There should be though.
All right, Intharth, go.
No, it's not a common rule, but I agree. Like I do think there's merit to having because otherwise they're just media on YouTube or whatever that you got to look for. But on the speedrun page, you can see the RTA progression, but seeing the segmented progression, as well as like as history evolves, the game strategies evolves. You can see so this is how it looked perfect in 2015, but this is now how it looks perfect in 2025. There is a merit to the historical preservation from a categorical standpoint, not just like it's on YouTube standpoint. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah, no,
I think it
totally.
absolutely matters.
All good points. Mine, yes, there should be leaderboards. Two reasons. One, segmented runs are inherently competitive, like any speed run, and just on the surface, I think that means that leaderboards are a good idea, and nothing else matters beyond that. But secondly, I think that, and this is kind of a symptom of the way that I guess speedrun communities have evolved, and like the speedrun ecosystem, for lack of a better term, has kind of evolved over the past many years. Leaderboards have kind of become the place that you go to watch speedruns for a specific game. So I think that having a leaderboard, even if you're of the view that it is not as valuable to have scored like ranks on a leaderboard for a segmented run, which I don't agree with, but some people are of that opinion. I think that there's an argument that segmented runs should be on the leaderboard just for accessibility. Because otherwise a lot of people aren't even going to know that they exist, and those people may enjoy them if they did.
The one counter argument I have to being on a leaderboard that would be in favor of no, it shouldn't be, is most people that are going to like SRC to watch a run are going to watch the world record. They're not going to watch the tens of hundreds or whatever, how many are below that, right? They're going to watch the world record. If a segmented run is there and it's faster, they watch that, and it kind of
they should
it
absolutely be a separate
trivializes the
category.
RTA one. You know what I mean?
They should
No, but
absolutely
like even
be a
if they're
separate
on,
category.
even if they're on their own category, I think people would have a tendency to migrate to watch the segmented run because it's faster and more perfect.
Okay, I see your
So
point.
it kind of trivializes the merit of the RTA run.
Okay. Okay, Duane, Got two quick fire questions left. Duane, what is most fun
Yes.
to watch? Single segmented, or TAS?
Segmented. Duh.
Intharth.
TAS is more impressive to watch personally. Because, and again, it's because well, Dwayne, hold on. It's because it's what is beyond the human limit, right?
You are entitled to your opinion. This is purely opinion based.
You are
So-
entitled
Alright.
to be wrong, is what Duane says.
The human, yeah, exactly. The
No,
human
no,
limit
I'm literally not
is
saying
super,
that.
The human limit is super cool to watch, but TAS shows what the game is capable of if you really broke it down to the absolute finite amount of perfection.
Right. I'm going to go with segmented, and this is going to sound a little blunt. I'm going to go with segmented, and I don't care about all that stuff that Intharth just said about task runs, because when I go to watch a speed run, I want to see the best that a human could do. I
Fair
don't
enough.
care about the best that a machine can do. If I want to see the
But
best a machine could do, the machine should just make its own game.
Counter
So.
to that, then, if you want to see what the best a human can do you not care about what the best a human can do in a single segment?
Not really. That's something we'll get into in the
Really?
later section, but not really.
Okay.
Okay, last quick
Fuck my
fire
runs, I guess.
question, and we're gonna get a bit out of the box here, and you're gonna have to interpret this as you wish. You ready, Duane?
Yes.
Out of single segment, segmented, TAS, what runs are more valuable?
There's communities that don't even like consider segmented runs a thing, but I would argue segmented runs are the most valuable.
Intharth?
Again, this comes from the Red Faction perspective, but because of what Grant was able to do for RTA, I think segmented provides the most value in terms of human limit. Again, it comes back to the human limit, right? I do think that sort of it gives you what's possible for a human to do. Therefore, you can take that into RTA and use it there. So segmented provides the most value, but task provides the most how fast could it be value, but segmented provides the most how logically and reasonably fast could it be.
In a practical sense, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, I will completely agree with everything that the two of you just said. I would go with segmented, and I would go with segmented because I think segmented runs are fun to watch and fun to do on their own merit, and I think that they provide residual value to people who are not doing segmented runs but are instead doing RTA runs because they effectively act as research. Showing how to do things under ideal circumstances that you can then try to do under not necessarily ideal circumstances.
It sort of it brings back around like you have this one trick which is like a 1 in 30,000th chance, but the segmented run's gonna have it in it, always gonna have it in it.
Yeah. Okay, so as our inaugural quickfire question section, thank you everybody. Now we're going to go on to our second discussion section, and I am going to get it started with, this kind of relates to what we were talking about right before we went to the quickfire section, but what does a game need in order to be well suited for a segmented run? And Duane, I'm going to go with you first because I went with Intharth first for the first one.
A game needs to be best suited. A game needs to have good quick saves and accessible save files, and preferably if it had demos. Oh my gosh, if every game had demos, wouldn't like I've never even played a game.
Yeah.
I've never sped run a game that you could do a demo with. But yeah, basically it needs to have quick saves that I don't know how to make it like quick saves that preserve the entire game's status, like character velocity, exact movement, sound, etc.
Okay, so before you respond to that as well, I just kind of wanted to get a bit deeper into that. So that is great, and I agree with what you're saying, but those are all kind of like mechanical things about the game, like things that the game has. What about the gameplay itself? Like what aspects of the gameplay itself mean that segmented runs are more valuable than just doing an RTA run?
I understand. Games that lend themselves well to segmenting would preferably you'd see games that have like difficult movement mechanics, lots of ability for people to manipulate in-game physics to create speed, combat, like marksmanship necessary. resource management. Those I think are things that lead to making segmenting games really appealing.
Okay. Intharth, what do you think?
No, I get
Difficulty in general, difficulty.
right. Like it has to like. It's one thing to say RTA looks impressive. It's another thing to say it was impressive because all these frame perfect tricks were in it, right? And like that's where segmented shines, is it's going to show all these frame perfect things, right? And so not saying, because that's not really the game. The game could just exist and people wouldn't find these frame perfect things, right? But like I think Duane's right in the difficulty sense. Like the more difficult a run is, the more it lends itself well to segmented running, because it allows you to really explore the human limit with like we didn't even consider impossible viable for RTA on RF because of the railguns, right?
Duane
We
definitely
didn't care. Well, yeah, no, we definitely didn't. But like, but I do also agree with what he's saying about from the programmability standpoint, the save state or the quick save, quick loads, and just in general, like with demos, like it is like you're saying with Half-Life, it is impossible to understate how much value Half-Life got from the demos for the segmented runs. And like so it's difficulty, but it's also what does the game like source games in general just have demos, right? Left 4 Dead. I don't know. I think Portal has a version of it, but like Half-Life is like where it shines. Left 4 Dead has it. Like they didn't used to enforce demos for RTA, but now they do. And like you get this list of individual slices of levels as like a list of like the demos. And so I think that lends itself really well because, like you said, you can pick up. Whereas Red Faction, you can't really pick it up, right? But with a demo, and like what Duane, what you said with like configurable save stuff in Left 4 Dead 2, it's a bit of a hot topic, but they'll go in and they'll like take their position of the player when they load it into a level, and they'll save, copy, paste that, because when you load a level again, if you want to try it again a different day, your player or character might be in a different spot. So they copy paste that so that they can put their characters in the spot where they ended on the level load, so that everything is like as it was.
Oh yeah, that's fine, right?
Yeah. So I think games that
be?
have configurable save states and things like that lends itself well to segmented.
What about, so it took, my brain kind of farted for a moment because I was like, why did I even care so much about and wish that the games I speedrun have demos? And I think for me, mostly it was, if I'm remembering correctly, it was technical limitations of being able to
God, he's
record playing it, and
yeah.
that's as like as technology has, at least for me, like my computer has gotten better, but the games that I speedrun have not changed. Now, recording the game is not an issue. But I wonder for people speedrunning like modern games, I feel like even then, the technology of like shadow play and even like OBS is way more lightweight than stuff was before.
Yeah,
I feel
I remember doing that kind of stuff on Fraps. It was really unapproachable.
Something
right, and like
that
Fraps like locked your frame rate. It created huge files.
Yeah,
especially
and it was really laggy, really. It was a huge performance hit to be recording with it.
It's a little not. It doesn't really apply to single player games as much, but with like multiplayer or cooperative speedrunning, the replay or demo function is really good for segmented runs because it just allows you to go back in and record and do it from different perspectives rather than trying to get everyone's recording together. You can just go and record everyone's individual contribution, their best spots, etc.
That is true.
Yes.
What I would say on it, I think there are two things. Well, I agree with everything that the two of you have said regarding save states and quick saves and all that kind of stuff. Going to be back in a second. I think he can still hear us. The two things that I would say. One, I would say RNG. I think that RNG, as much as I really hate RNG when I'm playing games, RNG is something that is really, really, really well suited to segmented runs, because a lot of what you're doing when you're doing a segmented run with a game that has RNG is you're picking the best die roll. Yeah. So like that,
and you're doing that with TAS as well, right?
Sure.
You're doing it with TAS as well. You're picking the best roll.
In TAS, you're kind of eliminating the die roll as an aspect or as an element of the run, because you're controlling
not entirely,
the RNG.
Because I think a perfect TAS.
Different ways of saying the same thing.
Sure.
At like I think a perfect task would still run it live as such because you're relying on tools to manipulate how well you perform, not how well the game is around you.
So we'll get into tasks a bit more in a second,
Sorry,
but
I'm not trying to push tasks,
but yeah, no. So I think that games that feature RNG are well suited because the segments then become an exercise in kind of selecting the best excuse me, selecting the best die roll that you can get, and that's an interesting
yeah,
aspect again, as much as I hate RNG. The other thing that I'd
yeah,
say, and I think it's interesting that and what I'm going to say comes from the multiplayer side of games, but it's,
mm,
you know, kind of, I don't even know who originally said it, but it's kind of been a long held belief that what makes the best competitive game of any genre in any medium is it's easy to get into, it's simple to approach, but it's difficult to master. And I
yeah.
think that
Low
that
skills or high skill
applies.
ceiling.
Yeah, and I think that that applies to speed running as well. If you have a game that is extremely simple to do very well in, well, A, it's not the most suited game for a speed run to begin with, but B, there's not a whole lot to segment because if you're segmenting, you know, you're always
Yeah,
trying to perfect each individual section. But if it's really easy to perfect those sections, what are you really segmenting for? There's not a whole lot of point. So that's what I would say. I think that games that focus on RNG are really well suited, and games that are really, really, really difficult to grind, to go to Dwayne's point on difficulty. So
right. It sort of comes back to them. Even if there's an easy category, like with Red Faction or like with most games, right? There's an easy and a hard one. The hard one will always be more technically impressive from a segmented stat. Because the RTA for that, it will be impressive, but with segmented, you can just show off, right?
well, when in RTA for a game with a
Yep.
really, really difficult, like an impossible or nightmare or whatever, RTA is about, wow, you did this without dying.
Yeah,
It's less impressive to like watch the specific sequences. It's more about how did you not die? You know, you
yeah,
took all of these risks and still survived. That's the
yeah,
impressive part, rather
yeah,
than specifically what you're seeing.
yeah.
But in segmented, it's just like, oh wow, you're playing on such a difficult difficulty, and you managed to like get the segment where you rolled so great that it didn't matter that that guy would one shot you,
No,
or you know, you happen to lob a grenade off this wall and kill that guy so that he didn't kill you as soon as you entered the room. You know, it's
hmm.
those kinds of things. Dwayne is you're chomping at the bit to say something, I think. Oh,
No, nope, nope, nope.
okay. So next prompt. Are segmented runs, and Intharth, you'll like this because you've been kind of going toward this for a lot of it. Are segmented runs more or less valid than tool assisted runs?
You want me to go first?
Go for it.
Um,
Yeah.
More or less valid, yes. I think both provide equal spectacle because they're not RTA, but both provide their own innate value to the speedrun community as a whole. With tasks, I think it's again, what can be programmable? How can you best manipulate the code, right? Or like with tasks, how there's I'm struggling to find a run that I would compare for this one, but I think like it comes back down to Super Mario Bros. What is the human limit? And like they are frames away from it, from the task limit.
Yep.
So even they, even with tasks, sometimes things that are thought to be beyond the human limit in a task, some people will still look to that and go, but what if? And then they'll eventually somehow miraculously do it. And segmented run, it does bridge that gap. So it's more or less valid in the sense that, as I said, right as we said right at the start, it's that middle ground between the two. It shows what's
This is.
go for it, go for it.
Oh, I was gonna say this is. Man, my brain is. Uh, this makes me think about going back to like, appropriate for segmented runs as far as like, let's get this out of the way, at least my own personal opinions. Anyone can speed run anything with any context and with any you set up your own qualifications. If you want to make a speed run for cheap percent of red faction and that just is and there's no rules and it's how fast you can type in like end game, like cool, that's fine. I don't care about that you're doing it or that it's being done. Like um, but what I'm going to say is that I can imagine some people who poo-poo segmented speedruns because I just watched a Mario video the other day about apparently it's not that recent, but kind of recent, of like some glitch where if you fall in the lava when there's X amount of entities spawned, then it like warps you to the end credits.
That's
Um,
awesome.
That does sound
and
pretty awesome.
it is doable by humans, but like not like, let's say somebody did a segmented run. I don't know how you'd segment Mario, but like let's for hypothetically, let's say Mario had quick saves, and you just did a segment, a few frames before this possible jump into the lava to do it, and did that over and over until you got it, and then we're like, cool, look at my segment. My speedrun has 2 segments before this trick, and then the one after the trick. Look at like, again, like would that be a segmented speedrun? Like, sure, but no one's gonna care about it.
Right.
It's not like
Is
there's no
that because
value. There's no value to that.
is that because they're only segmenting for that specific trick?
No, this is hypothetical. People aren't doing this. I'm saying that if someone did do that, I have no problem like morally with that happening. I'm just saying that no one would care.
Yeah. I guess my take on it is, I wouldn't try to tell somebody that their speed run isn't valid. I
Yeah.
wouldn't do that, but personally, I I see. I mean, okay, so obviously RTA speedruns are valid, whatever that means. No argument there, no serious one anyway. Segmented runs, I think, are kind of like a group of individual RTA runs that are merged together to show the best that is humanly possible under perfect circumstances if you roll correctly for the entire game and you did everything absolutely perfect. I think
Yeah.
TAS is more of a programming exercise than it is a speed run. And it is impressive in that. I don't mean to take anything away from it. The people who do these sorts of things are very skilled at what they do. But I think a TAS run is more so just a showcase of your programming skill, and the application of that programming skill than it is a speed run. Like, yes, it is a speed run, but it's a lot more a demo of your skill than it is an actual run of the game. So I think that's kind of my take on that, and just kind of go back to one of the things that we were saying earlier. Um, do you think that it is fair to say that segmented runs are more approachable to run, but less approachable outside of the game? Like less approachable to edit, less approachable to do the logistics for, to do the planning for, that sort of stuff. Whereas RTA runs are less accessible to play, but far more accessible for everything around playing because you just need to make a recording. Would you agree with that?
Like it,
I,
if
I
if
think
you're a
what you say is
streamer, yes.
correct. Yeah, and yeah, segmented runs are like an individual pursuit. They're not as fun, yeah, as a group thing for people to watch. Like if I were, like, I don't think I'd even watch somebody making a segmented speed run. Like I don't watch a whole lot of like streaming or live stuff anymore.
I don't think people
Um,
stream making the segments though.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could
So,
stream attempts, I
but
guess, but like,
and
You could,
I
you
would
could.
argue that like segmented speedruns aren't necessarily more approachable to like to a de facto segmented run. Isn't like, hey, I just played the levels over and over until I figured all the stuff out and learned the things, and now I'm going to go do whatever. I I don't know. Like so you're de facto like doing a segmented speed run, but this, not really.
okay. Intharth, do you have anything to add on that?
I think when it comes to approachability from the outside, from the player's perspective, not the game's perspective, right? Because that's the question, right? Like it's the it a lot of it is time dependent, right? You might be shift speedrunning shit the SpongeBob SquarePants for 10 hours every single night. You might have that time to. You might be streaming, might be your full time occupation, and you have the time to do that. You might not. You might be someone who works 9 to 5. You might not have all the time in the world to learn a game, but you can learn it segmented, and you can make a segmented run. But then it comes down to, okay, but do I really want to sit there and edit all these different things together and do it over? Like you would, it would take longer to make the segmented run than it would take to do 3 or 4 RTA runs at night, right? In essence, but at the same on the same foot, it would you would still probably have the joy of doing these segments over and over again till you got it right, but it is time consumptive.
So,
So
sorry, go ahead.
like, from a new person perspective, going back to like what we said about why RTA would be more, you know, approachable, because you can just load up the game and just start and hit play and go. It diminishes a bit when you factor in time. That's really what I was going at.
Okay, so last question that I will pose to the two of you for this episode. What is a game that, and I'm not going to ask you whether there is a segmented run out there, because I'm not expecting you to just go and Google stuff, and you obviously haven't seen every
You're back
segmented run on the
Googling.
face of the earth. But what is a game that you have not personally seen a segmented speedrun for that you would really want to see a really well researched and well executed segmented speedrun for?
Oh.
Duane, you go first.
I don't know if it's possible, but for a long time, not a long time. I was trying to do a segmented run for Fear 2, and I thought that
Oh,
would be.
really?
I just thought it was a fun game, and especially the level of combat difficult when played on its hardest difficulty. Um, if for people not familiar with the Fear series, one of the game's core mechanics is that you have the power to like slow down time, like a bullet time type of thing, and
Yeah.
it's like my brain is farting again, but yeah, you have like a meter that like for like as long as you hold, it's like a sprint meter, but it slows down time. So what that does is when you play the Fear games on their hardest difficulties, it's, in my opinion, specifically Fear 2, the combat outside of slow mo is brutal because the game was never balanced to have you doing combat at in real speed. So but if you were to speed run the game, you would have to do as little slowing down time as possible because it also slows down your character's movement.
Right, yeah.
And
That's interesting.
I think that it would be really cool to segment that game to show how gunplay and marksmanship and learning enemy spawns and all of that, well, and balancing that with like finding how much, where and how much one actually has to use the slow-mo to literally get through a level. And this goes back to like what we talked about with segmented runs being these notches in the bedpost. Terrible analogy, but like of
I
like
get you.
where a game is at a certain time. Be like, okay, well, this person did their best on this segmented speed run. I'm going to go back and I'm going to try and do this level better, because if they use the slow mo ever, that means there's room for improvement.
Right.
And the segmented speedrunner, like if I was them, I'd say like, yes, I know it's possible. Like for me right now, for this human, I don't think anybody else can get through this using slow mo less than this. And then it would be up to other people to try and do better.
All right. Intharth?
I get what you're saying, because like I just want to like I get what you're saying, because like it's like what I was talking about with that Smash Bros. Melee like community some of best. It's like if there is one frame off, you're not perfect, and you can get that frame right. So it's about striving for, can I, like you're saying with slow mo, it's as long as there is any slow mo in a 7-minute run, it is not perfect, and you could do better, right? That's the idea, right?
Yeah, would it be like, what
Yeah.
if there was a level that was humanly
Viable.
impossible to beat? Like
Yeah.
I
mean,
don't, but that would be
there
up to
is
you'd have to find that out.
There is
Yeah.
a perfect way to do that. I mean, it's like I take that back to Half-Life 21 or 2041. Like that run ends with the player at exactly one life. And in most games, that would just
crazy
be
to me.
okay, great, you stay alive. But specifically in Half-Life, because of that infinite life glitch on that door with the Marine, and I can't actually remember what the name of the level is, but you know what the infinite life glitch in Half-Life with
Yes.
the door is. Because of that, because that costs you time, ending the run at exactly one life means that there was a lot of work. Excuse me. There was a lot of work that was put into identifying exactly how long you had to stay on that door to gain exactly the right amount of life, so that you didn't waste time gaining more life than you were ultimately going to need, and that you had enough life for the rest of the run. And so
because the health is used as a resource, right?
Exactly.
As a movement resource.
It's a trade-off, time for health, and it's the min-max between that. So I think that kind of is similar to what you're talking about with like the time slow.
Exactly.
Thing.
Yes.
And I think that's a really interesting thing.
Sorry, go
ahead.
It's tough because I don't have an answer. Like there's so many games out there. Like one that I come back to is Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, because it's a level-based game, but there's upgrades in between, right? So you can't cut out the menuing. The menuing's part of the run. Right. But like I would love to, in a perfect segmented technical, because you can make it more I think there is a difficulty curve to it, right? And like, but at the same time, it's like there's games like the Harry Potter community, like they have games where they do it. They have categories where it's like, what's the least amount of spells you cast to beat the game? Like, can you beat the game without casting spells to solve the puzzles? Like, and you could do that with Portal. Like, there's this thing in Portal where there's like you do it with as least portals amount as possible, right? Like, how do you beat the game with fewer portals than you actually should technically use to beat it? And those kind of runs, like I don't have a game answer, but a category, I guess, is one where it lends itself well to what's the least amount of things I can do to beat the game as fast as possible, circumventing the game's necessary mechanic. Right. I apologize that I don't have a game specifically Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, because menuing and upgrades and games where there's upgrades like that intrinsically lends itself to me, because you could perfect the amount of money you get to spend on upgrades and things and all that kind of stuff.
Do RTS, or is it a real-time strategy?
What, Return of the King?
Return of the King?
No, Return of the King is a hack and slash PS2 game.
Okay. But
although the Battle
why
of
would
Middle
menuing...
Earth, there is no segmented in that, so that would be fun. That's the RTS.
Wait, so you said so Return of the King, the one you're talking about, is that did you say it was a PS2 game?
It's a PS2 game, and like hack and slash game where you beat a level, you get a certain amount of XP reward for like how you dealt with enemies. If you got into perfect mode, you get better XP. So then you get you can spend that on upgrades before you go to the next level.
I was going to argue that I felt like I was going to argue that I felt like, depending on the community, that you could not include menuing in a segmented run, because that's not a skill issue. But the fact that it's not on PC for whatever reason shifts my.
There is a PC version of it. There is.
I would say on the PC version, I'd be like, don't include the menuing. Like, as soon as the human input, like real-time human input matters.
But there is human input on the menuing, because you're picking up.
Like, there literally is, but I mean,
that's an interesting debate, actually, and it's probably not a debate that we have enough time for in this specific session. But that is actually a very, very interesting debate, and I know different games handle that differently. And I'm about to talk about that in a game that I was going to give, but that is very interesting.
Do it.
Yeah, okay. Hit us.
Okay, so sorry, 2 games that are on my list for I have never seen a segmented run, and I'm relatively confident that one does not exist, but I would love to see. One, I apologize that I'm probably going to mispronounce the name of this game, but it's that Kvark game, which is a Kvark, how do you pronounce it? I think it's a Czech word, if I remember correctly. But it's it's like kind of a Half-Life style. Yeah, it's like a Half-Life style KVARK. It's like a Half-Life style FPS game, and it's really impressive. I absolutely love playing it. It's on SRC. I've done some runs of individual levels, but it is a really hard game. So 1, that makes it really interesting to me. 2, it is a game where you get these like upgrades. I can't remember the name, but it's like this radiation injection thing that you pick up, and that's actually Wolfenstein 09 had a similar mechanic where like you pick up these like
I would have said
points or whatever, and then you can spend those on upgrades for your kit and your player and that sort of thing. And so kind of going back to what you were saying, Duane, about like time versus the upgrades that you're getting, time versus the benefit that you get from spending that time. No doubt there is a perfect amount of these things to pick up, and there's a perfect order in which to pick them up to min-max the amount of time that you're spending getting them and how far you have to go away from your normal course to get them, like relative to the benefit that you get from having gotten them and applying them. And even then, like the difference in that benefit, how much that benefit matters versus if you get upgrade X at the end of level 1 or wait until the end of level 4 to get that same upgrade. So
It's
for,
like,
for all the reasons that you just said, I think that's an interesting game. And sorry, did you have a point? I have another game, but did you have a point before
yeah,
I do that?
our RTA lends itself well to playing it safe, to be consistent, and segmented lends itself to being risky and doing the absolute bare minimum you need to do to get through that as fast as possible.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep.
And so the other game that I had was Sanguine Soul, which Intharth, I know you've played. It is a
Wayne's looking it
really
up. He's like, "What is this?"
it's a really interesting indie kind of first-person RPG kind of, and it's a really simple game to be honest. It's not even that long, and the mechanics
It's
are
3
relatively
levels, right?
straightforward. Yeah,
I
3 or
remember.
4, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah,
Again, it's
yeah.
not that long. But the reason why I think it would be really interesting to see like a really well-researched segmented run is kind of for the same reasons that we've been tossing around, how like you have to prioritize resource availability. That game has a really interesting mechanic, which I'm sure exists in other games, but I've not personally seen anywhere else, where it's an RPG, so you're casting spells and like projectile spells and that sort of stuff, but
You teleport?
your meter between health and mana is like it's the same meter, and there's a divider between your health and mana. So if you want to
I've
lower your
forgotten.
health, you can get more ammo that you then spend on stuff. Or if you want more health so you can take more damage, you can lessen your mana so you can't shoot as much. And I always thought that that was a really interesting mechanic because,
Can
again,
teleport.
no doubt there is a perfect way to handle that. And you can adjust the ratio as you play and as you pick up stuff. No doubt there is a perfect way to handle that. And I can't help but think that if someone really put a lot of research into identifying the best way to, I don't need a whole lot of health in this section, I need more bullets, or I need a lot of health in this section because it's quicker for me to just tank the damage and not try to kill anything and just run. I think that there's some really
I think with
interesting
Sanguine
calculations there.
Soul, I think with Sanguine Soul, the whole objective of the game is you have to clear every single room before you can progress. So it would be a case of how much health can I get away with to clear the room as fast as possible?
It
What's the
could
bare
be. If I
minimum I
remember
could?
correctly, there are some rooms where you don't need to kill everything, unless I'm mistaken
I
on
might be
that.
misremembering, but I'm
But
watching it right now, trying to remember, and I just killed everything there.
or
So.
maybe there was a section where there was like a glitch to get in behind stuff, so you didn't need to kill everyone in that room because you could get in behind them. I don't know. It's been a little while since I
No,
played
no,
the
no.
game.
What
But
I literally just seen what you're talking about. What it is so you go out of bounds to cut across to a different section of the level, but you still have to clear your way back through the level and still kill every
oh,
enemy on the way back.
okay, so
No.
the order can change, but either way, I mean, it's the
Wait,
same
no, no,
sort of
no.
thing.
Never mind. Never mind. You get the key and you go through it. Never
Okay,
mind.
well,
I'm
either way,
talking shit.
it's the same thing that I was saying. Like it's a calculation that you constantly have to be
Yeah,
doing of
that is a cool
does it
mechanic. I
make
forgot
does
about
it
that.
make more sense to tank damage or try to kill these things? Because if you try to kill them, yeah, you're safe, but you need to use ammo and you need to use time. But if you're tanking damage, are you going to be able to tank all of that damage? And then you've got RNG involved because you've got AI pathing and spread, and you have fancy movement to avoid taking damage. Like, I don't know, there's just a lot of really interesting things at play in that game that on the surface seems extremely simple but is a lot deeper than it seems. So
So,
those are my two picks for games that I would love to see segmented runs of. And if
so
anybody
you
is watching this and would like to take either of those on, please do. I would love to watch them.
when you brought up Wolfenstein, I was like, I could have said Return to Castle Wolfenstein, but I have seen the segmented run for Return to Castle Wolfenstein.
It's
But
very impressive.
so your
It's much more like a
categorical,
Quake, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
because you've got the fucking
RTCW
strafe jumping.
was very very close. I mean, it was the same engine.
Yeah.
It's the same dev. It used a lot of the same stuff.
But so for like something you're saying like mechanics that intrinsically force you to decide on what to do in a given moment or make it more appealing to watch from a segmented perspective.
Well, I'm saying mechanics that force you to make a calculation that involves a trade-off with time.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if it's a speed run, time is the only thing that you care about at the end of the day. So anything that
Right.
you have to trade time for needs to be worth it
Has
in
to
the
have a really
time
good
saving.
fucking reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it needs to be worth it in time saved later on. And if it's not, then you shouldn't do it. Just being as mathematical about the logic as possible. But there's a lot of really interesting factors that go into that. Like, yes, it's a lot better if I'm going down this hallway. It's faster technically to not pick up that health kit. but then I need to be good enough at, quick firing the enemy around the corner,
Yeah.
or I need to be good enough at movement so I don't get hit.
That's, yeah.
So I don't know. It's just those
where-
trade-offs and those calculations, the risk versus reward that you need to make is really, really interesting to me.
That's really where I was hitting it from, like from the Harry Potter community, with like they do like the low cast percent, because it's like you're trading the fastest solution for the minimum viable solution,
Yeah.
So that is impressive to me as well. That's yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so we're gonna get this to a close. Duane, did you have anything you wanted to add on that before we say goodbye?
No, I think this was a great constructive discussion.
That is a lot better than other types of discussions.
Yeah. Thanks for the
thank you both for your time. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna get a complaint about how people don't like segmented runs for an hour, but you did a very good job at it, and I did a very good job of being like, no, that's not constructive. We are going to talk about what makes segmented speedrunning. This isn't the Duane Jones complain episode. That'll be later.
Yeah, there you go, Duane. It's you're wrong, but here's why you're wrong. It's
like I said, I think all three forms of running a game are valid. I think
I
PASS
agree.
has its own categorical of validness, but segmented bridges the gap between machine perfect and human perfect, and consistency and safe RTA reliable.
I agree. Good summary. Okay, so at that, we will call this to a close. Thank you both for your time. Look forward to the next episode. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Later.